everybody, it's Mr. Wagstaff. Cool stuff to talk about today. So today we're going to be talking about the dramatic conclusion of the American conflict in Vietnam. Let's get started. So in our last lesson we talked extensively about the fact that the war in Vietnam is basically unwinnable. So while it becomes pretty apparent that the actual military conflict in Vietnam is not going to be successful, we're going to focus on the other war that is happening simultaneously. I say that figuratively, pretty much, because Vietnam is really considered like a two-front war. Obviously the actual war in Vietnam, and then public opinion back home, because public opinion is wildly negative against Vietnam. And so the war on the home front is a pivotal part of the Vietnam conflict, because while it's obviously not popular in South Vietnam, it's not popular in America either. So one of the main things you need to understand is that to get all of these troops to go to Vietnam, we needed more troops than we had volunteers. So what they did is they drafted people. Drafting it is a constitutional requirement. If the government needs you to defend America, 18-year-old males can be required to go fight for the country. This is what happens in Vietnam. This is the last time the draft has been used, and we'll talk about that why it's the last time here in a second. If you guys have ever seen the movies, The Hunger Games, where they're like pull people's names out of like a bucket to like go fight, it's a fictional movie. That is pretty much what the draft was. It was a draft lottery. And based on your birth date, there was this show that would come on TV. And it's called literally the draft lottery. And they would spin this lottery thing and inside these little capsules or numbers that associate with birthdays. And everybody that's registered has a number. And if they pull your number, everybody in the country with that number just got drafted. So the draft, not surprisingly, is pretty unpopular. What you need to understand is prior to this, when drafts happened, it wasn't always wildly unpopular because the wars were pretty well supported, like World War I, World War II. Vietnam, however, is not a popular war, and people actively do not want to be drafted. The easiest way to avoid being drafted, all right, if you're 18 years old, is to go to college. If you go to college, you don't get drafted. Then the government realizes, wait a minute, there's a lot of people that are just going to college and applying to college so they don't get drafted, but they're never actually going to class. Because, as you see here, the number of people enrolling in college skyrockets during Vietnam, and then afterwards continues to go up as well. But tons of people are going to college purely to avoid the draft. Then the United States says, all right, you have to have over a 3.0 GPA in college in order to continue to be exempt from the draft. So GPAs go up. People start studying a lot more. So it's kind of interesting that the number one way of being exempted from the draft is to go to college. Why college? Of all places, why college would exempt you from the draft? Not the defense industry or anything like that, but college. Well, this is taking place in the 1960s. There's something else taking place in the 1960s that we'd already talked about, and that's the space race. If you see, here are two timelines, all right? Space race at the top and Vietnam War at the bottom. You need all your smart people for NASA. So you didn't want to mess with, people making rockets trying to send people to space. So that's a big reason why the deferment applied to college people, because we needed all the smart people for the space race, which was a Cold War conflict as well. Because you could be deferred by going to college, it means everybody tried to go to college that could. Black people had a really hard time going to college in the 1960s for a variety of reasons. Number one, college is really expensive, and black people and African Americans at the time were not allowed the same jobs white people were and weren't paid as well, and they were the poorest part of the population. Harder to afford college. Also, what is important is that colleges are still segregated. There weren't as many black colleges available as white colleges. So black people had a harder time finding any of these deferment opportunities similar to what white people were. Because of this, even though black people only make up about 13% of the American population, they make up almost 30% of the people that were drafted to go fight in Vietnam. So a disproportionate amount of African Americans served in Vietnam based on their percentage of population because they did not have the ability to avoid the draft like other people did. A lot of people that got drafted did something that had never really been done before, ever, because the wars hadn't been unpopular like World War I and World War II. They got drafted and they burned their draft cards, which means they were said, you have to go to war, and they said no. And burning their draft card, this is a felony, all right? If you refuse to go to Vietnam, if you get drafted, you go to federal prison for 5 years and get a $250,000 fine, all right? There's a lot of people that are like, well, do it. Thousands and thousands and thousands, all right, of people got drafted and refused to go. So at the time, the military just keeps drafting more people until they get enough people that are, not refusing to go, and they're like, well, we'll put you all in prison later. Well, after the Vietnam War ends, and we're gonna get to that today, you have like 50,000 people that have to go to prison for 5 years for not going in the draft. This would be almost impossible to add 50,000 people to the prison system because it's really expensive to put people in federal prison. So in 1977, so the war here is pretty much end up, we're talking about that 71, 72. In 1977, because it was like all these people had to go to prison because of by 1977, back when the Vietnam War was taking place, Jimmy Carter gets elected president, and the very first thing he does is passes an executive order which says amnesty to everybody who didn't go in Vietnam. So there's no punishment, there's no prison, there's no felony charges, there's no $250,000 fine. Because of that, there's a lot of questions present day over, since there is no punishment for not going in the draft, and a lot of people went in the draft and had horrific experiences and died or had family members that did, but the people who didn't go, there is no punishment for them. Really makes people question present day, and because we have not had a draft since Vietnam, would it be effective today? Because if people are like, I'm not going to go, the precedent has been set that Jimmy Carter just allowed people amnesty. So the question is, why do you think the government would allow for college students to defer from the draft? Think about what else is taking place in the 60s. We showed that with the timelines. So pause me, answer that completely. We're moving on. So in large part because the draft is so unpopular and the war itself is so unpopular, there is a second war, and it's called the War on the Home Front, which means the protests inside the United States, and they are intense. All right. So you basically are one thing or the other. You're either a hawk or a dove. A hawk is somebody who supports the war in Vietnam. The doves are people who are against the war in Vietnam. Typically, it's pretty much divided by age for the most part. People who are war hawks that support the war, typically people who fought in World War II, fought in the Korean War, the fight against, Nazis and communists, that's a good fight. The people mainly, the people that mainly are war doves are going to be the younger population, a lot of college students. They're like, this is different than, North Korea invading South Korea, where South Korea wants help and not be taken over and made communist. We're trying to, people in Vietnam are trying to shoot an idea of communism. So the biggest opponents and protesters at the time are actually college students, college-age kids, because the only reason they're not in Vietnam is because they're of college age. There's also a disdain against the draft. Not only is there this belief that it goes against your rights of being forced to go do something against your will, which in theory they argue the 13th Amendment, which bans involuntary servitude. The biggest one, and this is a legit one that's going to make a big change, is that you can be drafted to fight in Vietnam at 18 years old. So you are man enough to be drafted, to go to boot camp for 3 months and be shipped over to Vietnam, given M16, and go make life and death decisions and search and destroy missions. You can do that. All right, you're man enough for that, but you're not old enough to vote. You can't actually even vote until you're 21 years old at the time. So you're man enough to go fight for the country, but you're not man enough to vote for who gets to make that decision to send you. So there is a huge push to have the voting age dropped from 21 down to 18. The 26th Amendment is going to pass, which does that after the Vietnam War. And so today the voting age is 18 because the argument is if you're old enough to fight for your country, you're old enough to vote for the people that are going to send you. But it's not just college kids and people protesting. There is a huge, and Martin Luther King Jr. is against the war in Vietnam. So why are we going over there fighting? First off, this is black men should not fight in Vietnam for racists in the United States. Martin Luther King Jr. makes a statement which carries on. He's like, South Vietnam hasn't done anything. South Vietnam hasn't segregated me. South Vietnam hasn't called me the N-word. Or the Vietnamese haven't done that to me. Why am I going to go fight them? Like, I don't have anything against them. If they want their way of life, why are we going to go shoot them to try to get them to like us? So the black community as well, because they're disproportionately being drafted, are also protesting against it. One of the most famous protests in the Vietnam War is Jane Fonda and this particular picture. So a lot of people are anti-Vietnam War and they're really against it. Jane Fonda, pretty much by the vast majority of accounts here, by people's public opinion, she takes it too far. Jane Fonda is a very famous actress at the time, and she continues to be an actress even after this, very well known throughout her career. She is very much against the war in Vietnam, so much so she actually flies to North Vietnam, all right, and basically gets pictures taken here sitting on an anti-aircraft gun. That's not a, people, is that a gun they have pointed at her? Those are microphones back in the 60s. They're old. But these anti-aircraft guns shoot down American planes. She talks about that she hopes the American soldiers get killed because they shouldn't be here in North Vietnam loves this. She's treated great in North Vietnam because this is the best advertisement that you can get. If you're a soldier in South Vietnam who's there to fight because were drafted and didn't want to be there, and you hear this celebrity actress is talking about how she hopes the Vietnamese kill the soldiers, there's clearly some hostility between the two groups. So the question is, what was the motivation behind the 26th Amendment that lowered the voting age from 21 to 18? So pause me, answer that completely. Moving on. So a bunch of stuff is going to happen in 1968. To kick it off, Lyndon B. Johnson, he's the president. He decides in 1968 he can run for re-election in 1968. He just announces on live TV, I'm not running again. I'm done. There were 24-hour protests outside the White House gates that chanted, hey, hey, LBJ, how many babies you killed today? Over and over and over. There's no way, with the Tonkin Gulf Resolution, it's all on him. There's no way out of this war in which America can leave and be successful. He's like, I'm out. Not only does he not want to deal with Vietnam anymore, it's too much for him. Since he's a Democrat, it would be really bad, because this never happens that a president who can run for re-election decides not to, because it would be really bad for his political party. Well, another reason it's easy for him to step down is there's a very, very popular person who wants to be the Democratic candidate and is going to win in a landslide. You remember JFK, the guy that he was the vice president under that got assassinated? His little brother is going to run for president. His name is Robert Kennedy. So when when Lyndon B. Johnson steps down, Robert Kennedy is going to run for president in 1968. He's going to win. He's going to be a Democrat. So it's an easy out for Lyndon B. Johnson. He doesn't let his political party down. He has nothing to do with Vietnam. He's out. So when Lyndon B. Johnson drops out of the race, which he never joins, Robert Kennedy is running for president. While he is running for president, Robert Kennedy, who's the younger brother of JFK, it's like JFK 2.0, he gets assassinated. He gives a speech as walking through the kitchen through a hotel. The speech was in a hotel, walking through the back door, and this guy shoots him. Crazy people. And he shoots Robert Kennedy, and Robert Kennedy dies. So, and this is before the election. So the Republican running is Richard Nixon. If you remember, Richard Nixon is the guy who campaigned against John F. Kennedy in 1960, and they had that televised interview or that televised debate in which Richard Nixon lost because he didn't look as presidential. He's going to be the front runner here as a Republican. Herbert Humphrey is Lyndon B. Johnson's vice president. He has no chance. But this third party guy is important to point out here in 1968. Spoiler alert, Nixon's going to win huge. But George Wallace runs. He's not a Republican or a Democrat. He's an independent. George Wallace says, if I'm elected, I'm going to resegregate America. Keep in mind, in the early 1960s, just 5 years before this, John F. Kennedy was not popular because he supported the civil rights movement. All right? And so there's a lot of people that are anti-civil rights movement 5 years before. When George Wallace runs and he says, I'm going to resegregate America, he does get a lot of votes. But he gets way less than anybody else. Which, while that's crazy, that 5 states voted for the guy who says we're going to resegregate America, what's important to know is that 45 states didn't. America is actually progressing here, as horrible as that sounds, in 5 years. There's 45 states that's like, we've moved past that. Segregation is unacceptable. The same thing that actually made JFK unpopular basically stood no chance of being successful in 1968. So George Wallace and basically any official national movement to resegregate America is going to die with George Wallace. George Wallace also gets shot. He survives though, of all the people. All right, so Richard Nixon, he's going to win the presidency. Now, Richard Nixon wins easily, basically because he just says the only thing anybody has to say to win the presidency in 1968, if you elect me, I'm going to get us out of Vietnam. That's all. So he wins. So when he becomes president, we're like, all right, Nixon, how are you going to get us out of Vietnam? So he's like, all right, I got this idea. And now, Richard Nixon, and we're going to talk more about him. Richard Nixon is probably one of the most intelligent presidents we've ever had, very high IQ. That's not a good thing for Nixon. The reason that's not good is Nixon's the smartest person he's ever met. So therefore, he doesn't think other people have good ideas. So he never really discusses things or gets other points of view on anything. He just does everything what he thinks because he's like, I will surely have the best ideas. All right. So because of that, it gets himself in some trouble we'll talk about in later lessons. One of the things that will affect you right here is he loves to make vocab words. He comes up with this concept called Vietnamization. Vietnamization is his idea on how to get out of Vietnam. He's like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to slowly start moving troops out of South Vietnam and bring them home. So slow, North Vietnam won't even notice until all of a sudden there's no more American troops there one day, and then North Vietnam will just not think about attacking South Vietnam because they think American troops are still there. It's oversimplification, but that doesn't even sound good in theory. So, but the idea is he's going to gradually start bringing troops home. At this point, we acknowledge that we're not going to win this war. That we've kind of given up the idea of winning. So the question kind of becomes about the soldiers over there. Why are we even still here then? Because they've been drafted. These are not volunteers here in Vietnam. Why are we still here doing this if we're clearly not committed to winning? So the question here is, explain some of the motivations behind Lyndon B. Johnson deciding not to run for re-election in 1968. So pause me, answer that completely, and we're moving on. All right. Between 1968 and 1971, 4 catastrophic things happened that basically make the war completely indefensible by the United States government, it gets done. So the first thing is the United States government had been trying to convince the American population that we're about to win. Like the North Vietnamese army, they can't stand up to the United States military. Sure, the Viet Cong caused problems, but the North Vietnamese army, they're about done. So there's a very important holiday in Vietnam called Tet. All right? Vietnam's been at war forever, whether it was the Japanese, whether it was the French, and nobody fights on Tet. It's like their mega holiday. They're like Christmas, Easter, 4th of July, all rolled into one for Vietnam. So in 1968 on Tet, Americans expecting there not to be any fighting. North Vietnam invades South Vietnam using the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and in one day almost takes over the entirety of South Vietnam. Everything in yellow is what the North Vietnamese army takes over. Not the Viet Cong, the North Vietnamese army that was supposed to be getting weaker. This is what the town, just ransacked places and shoved the American troops out. America, over the next couple months, is able to re-secure all this area. But after the Tet offensive, American mentality, anybody that thought that America still might have a chance of winning, completely changed their mind, because there's no way after the Tet offensive that the North Vietnamese army actually appears to be getting stronger, not weaker. Then, and so there are some photographs. There's some things I'm just not going to show you because it's too traumatizing to me. There's an event called the My Lai Massacre that's going to further horrify the American public. So a group of soldiers are on search and destroy missions going in through village to village to village. They get into a village in which all the men are gone. The only thing left are women, old people, and children. The men should be there farming, but they're not. This convinces this American platoon, who have been getting attacked by the Viet Cong for the past couple of days in the region, that this is the Viet Cong home base because those men should be working in the fields, otherwise they're out being Viet Cong. So they clearly cross just a line of humanity here. They just start executing the women, children, and old people in firing squad. Just line them up and shoot them. Nazi execution, genocide style. Just murdering innocent people because they believe they're Viet Cong sympathizers. The only reason we know about this is because there's a helicopter pilot that's flying back after dropping off some troops that sees this blow, sees this massacre taking place, and this is completely illegal and wrong. The American helicopter pilot actually lands his helicopter between the people that are being executed and the American soldiers, and goes and gets on the M60 and has a standoff with the American soldiers. The American soldiers end up, everybody's pretty much dead already. The American soldiers just walk off into the woods, and he flies his helicopter back to the base and fills out a report on this. So he knows who they are, because you know who the platoons are and where. So he fills out the report of what he saw, that this war crime clearly, and he turns it into a superior officer. The superior officer knows that this is going to be a really bad situation, so he just hides it for 2 years. In 1968, a reporter gets a hold of this report that nothing's ever been done with it, and they put it in the newspaper in the United States. They name all the soldiers that were doing the atrocities. So they go and interview them. Hey, this says you were killing them. Did you really kill people? And they said, yeah, we shot them. We shot the women, we shot the old people, with no remorse, because they were being ordered to do this. This absolute atrocity called the My Lai Massacre horrifies the American people, that American soldiers are out here shooting women, children, and old people just execution style. This really turns the American public against the soldiers as much as anything else. So that's 1968. This is all these massive protests, show-ups, and start protesting the Vietnam War. So in 1970, there is a big protest against the war at a college called Kent State. So at Kent State, huge protest against the Vietnam War. This is in Ohio. Because the protests got so big, they call on the National Guard to keep it under control. So the protest is against the military. The National Guard is the military, so it doesn't take long for the protesters to actually start yelling at the National Guard. Tensions rise, and the National Guard opens fire and kills 5 people at Kent State, which is wild. So the United States military, which everybody is protesting, has now opened fire on unarmed college students. To this day, the National Guard is not allowed live ammunition for crowd control because of this situation. People are outraged at the military start to finish. Then, and this is the big one that Nixon can't really. Nixon's like, oh my gosh, like the hits keep coming. In 1971, all right, everybody already hates the war. These things get leaked called the Pentagon Papers, all right? These are top secret documents that basically say the Tonkin Gulf incident, the whole thing that got America involved in the Vietnam anyway, it never happened. Like the entire reason that America's involved in this war, we just made up to get involved. So there's actually no legal reason to have been in the war in the first place. When that comes out, it is a massive, massive, overwhelming movement to get America out of Vietnam. So the question here is, how did these events cause the war to be indefensible by the United States government and hasten the end of the conflict? So basically explain how those things made the war so unpopular that the United States government couldn't defend continuing with it. So Nixon speeds up this process of Vietnamization, getting them out, realizing this people are demanding it. So Nixon, it's kind of he starts bombing Laos and Cambodia, kind of like boom, boom, boom. All right, nobody's paying attention. Get the troops out of there. Vietnamization is not going to trick anybody. People can clearly see that the Americans are leaving, and so Vietnamization is just the gradual withdrawal is not effective. So, but people are leaving, and then it speeds up after the Pentagon Papers. So soldiers start getting airlifted out left and right because there's tons of soldiers in Vietnam, and they're put on helicopters and they're airlifted out. There are a lot of civilians that had helped the United States that clearly if the communists take over, they're going to be like executed for helping the United States the whole time here. So they are airlifted out. So where are they airlifted to? And I always think this is really cool. If you probably wouldn't think about it unless I tell you about it. They're airlifted to aircraft carriers. Now, Vietnam used tons and tons and tons and tons of helicopters. We don't take the helicopters home after Vietnam. We also don't want to leave them so that North Vietnam or the communists can have it. So what happens is when these helicopters land on the aircraft carrier, and there's like a whole line of helicopters coming in, and they're like, the helicopters take up a lot of space. So what they do is once everybody's off the helicopter, they get there and they push it overboard and just drop it into the ocean, and it sinks to the ocean floor so the next helicopter can land, unload, and they just push it into the ocean. So that's how I just always thought that was crazy. There's all these videos of people just pushing the helicopters into the ocean. One of the saddest pictures is this is the last helicopter out of Saigon. It's the name of this photo. This happens, this is the U.S. Embassy. Ho Chi Minh and his troops have taken over South Vietnam. These are all supporters of America that have supported America top to bottom. This helicopter's full. They're having to like push the ladder down. Like, no, you can't get in this helicopter because they're going to get in the helicopter and they're going to take off. And all of these people are going to experience a really bad, because again, they've been fighting against Ho Chi Minh the whole time. They committed to America because we can convince them to do that. We pretty much let them down because we couldn't get them out of Vietnam. Today, there is a memorial for the Vietnam War that's in Washington, D.C. Engraved on this wall is every single person's name in the order that they were killed or went missing in the Vietnam War. It actually took like 20 some years after Vietnam ended for this memorial to be allowed to be placed here because the war was so unpopular, the government didn't want to remember it. So they're like, like at first they didn't want a Vietnam War memorial, then they wanted to put it somewhere else in Washington, D.C., and eventually it was allowed to put in Washington, D.C. where the other memorials are, and lucky that it was. So the question here is, explain what Nixon's idea of Vietnamization was, and whether you think it was an effective strategy to end the war in Vietnam. All right, that's what I got for you guys. Answer that completely. I'll see you guys tomorrow.